What's up, YouTube? Today I am going to be continuing the Symbiote series by working on Agent Venom for this video. And initially I had planned on doing a Dark Knight Batman cowl. However, due to one of the management parents passing away this week and a bunch of other problems and some people leaving and me getting a promotion and my schedule changing, I didn't get anything started until Wednesday, but managed to get this done over Wednesday and Thursday. So, I actually do have a video this week. At first I thought I wasn't going to be able to do a video, but I just switched around what I was going to do. And this was also going to be excellent practice for the one area of the Dark Knight mask that I just wanted to work on it, which was the brow area that comes up off either side, right above the points on the Dark Knight mask. And I had an idea about how I was going to go about doing the pattern, but doing this definitely helped me get some more ideas and some practice for that, so that's good. So apologies to those who I've told I would be doing the Dark Knight video. It will be next week. And speaking of schedule changes and promotions, I am going to be working more, which means there may be less videos or less slightly consistent upload schedule. And in the next few weeks in general, after the Dark Knight video, I have to get my fiance's Hellboy costume ready, or cosplay ready for the upcoming convention and the holidays, so may not have a consistent video upload schedule until we get a little more into January, but I'll know more once I start working. I'm also going to be hiring more people, and then I'll be cutting back a day, so that'll help me get hopefully back on schedule. But bear with me for a while, please, as we go through this, and I will stop yammering, and we can just go ahead and hop right into the build. Okay, so first I have taken my pattern for the main shell piece, which is only one for each side, which in a sense kind of makes it simpler, in other ways not. But I've taken my pattern, and if you happen to be making yours off of the photo from the Facebook image, you will probably have to chop that up to print it out on normal paper and then put it together. Or if you're purchasing the pattern on Etsy, it is in several pieces and you have to assemble it to get this full piece. Now I've taken mine and put it on some 5mm foam just so it's a little more sturdy, because I really wanted these lines to be exact as possible. And yes, that's right, if you're looking at this, you're seeing hash marks, and oh my gosh, on my finished patterns that I've drawn out, I've put them too. So anybody watching that notices that I never use this, I actually am on this, so shocker there. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut these out just like this. Now to cut these out, I had to use several things, one of which is an X-Acto knife to get into some of these harder areas, and the other thing I used is some very sharp scissors for the straight lines, so everything is nice and even and the same. The next one I'm going to use is my Drill Master heat gun, and I'm going to, as much as possible, separate out this piece of the pattern and just hit this, heat this piece here and this piece here. And I'm going to put some curvature into both of these. Right, and here is what it looks like now that I have heated it. I have heated each piece and I have curved them, both going this way and pulled a slight curve this way into each piece. And you'll notice, in particular up here on the top, that I just put a curve through here and I left this as flat. And you'll notice it's a little duller. Where I heated it, you'll see it's much shinier looking, for example, than the rest of the foam. Hopefully that color contrast will show up decent on film. And that's because in order for these edges to line up, I can't heat it too much. It'll warp it and mess it all up. And that's also, as you notice, there's no hash marks or registration marks, whatever you want to call it, through this area. Because once you heat and shape the foam, it's not bloody likely that they're going to match up. But the essential idea is that they will all come together like that and form a nice defined piece. And realize my idea. There we go. And first, I'm going to apply contact cement along this area here and glue this part of the mask together initially before I do anything else. And for that, I use DAP Weldwood contact cement. There are other brands. The only ones I have used that I can recommend expressly is DAP. It works pretty good. But the best is definitely barge contact cement, but it costs about 3 times as much. Alright, and here I have put these all together. Now, I apply the contact cement, let it sit for 15 minutes, and then once it was done, I started pressing all these together. First, I pressed this to this, and then the bottom piece, and then stuck them all together. When you get done, you should have this little crook here up in the eye. And that's how you know that you got it right. And there you can see I scorched the foam a bit with my heat gun. Oops. Anyways, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my contact cement, and I'm going to start gluing together all the smaller V's, like here, and the two on the chin, and the whole entire ear area right here. They're a little trickier to mess with, so I'm going to glue those first, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to glue all of this. Alright, so I have glued together all the V-cuts, of course, starting with the smallest ones first, right in through there in the ear, and then followed by the top itself here. And now I'm going to apply contact cement along this edge on each one to join the two shell halves together, and from there we'll start heat forming. Ready, here it is, both sides glued together, and for the most part there is already some decent shape in it. However, certain areas we need to work on is I'm going to heat this area right here, which will ultimately end up pulling this in and giving it more of a nose, brow shape. I wound up heating and flattening this out, pulling in some cheekbone definition, tweaking the nose and kind of putting some lines down it and flattening out the mouth a little bit. Before I get into all that though, we're going to do basic rounding of the basic head shell. And you'll notice, like on the points where you glue this together, you'll notice there's a little bit of a V there. It's not truly round. And part of that, of course, is because there is several cuts in the foam versus 100 little cuts going all the way across to get it perfectly round. So to even that out and to get all this round, I am going to once again use my Drill Master dual setting heat gun. It has a low and a high setting. Now you can use hair dryers, but it takes so much longer to get it hot and to heat it. And to help get this round, I have a canvas mannequin head. Although I have used other things, such as softballs, and I think at one point I even tried a grapefruit that wasn't quite ripe. That's a little extreme, but if you happen to have like a round wooden banister knob or anything like that round that you can use to help round this out, you can also just do it by hand, by heating sections, and looking at it as you're doing it for perspective, and just gradually evening it out. But it's much faster and much easier and much quicker to just heat it up on the mannequin head and use the shape of it itself to get it nice and round. So what I will do is use my heat gun. Get the area of the foam hot where I need it, and then just start pressing and working out the shape with my hands while the foam is still warm. Now, if you haven't used a heat gun, I do have a video in my series that I just started and only done 2 episodes of, but it's Cosplay Basics, and it goes over things like basic heat forming. And there you go. You can already see that point is already starting to disappear as I heat that specific area and round it out. So I'm going to continue to round out the rest of the mask, and then I'm going to start working on individual features. Like I said, things like popping out the ear, cheekbones. Alright, so nose. I now have the overall shell of the mask rounded out, at least in a basic sense. There's a couple little areas that I may tweak a little bit, but that's pretty much good. And as I worked from there, I heated this on the inside and the outside. First the inside, then on the outside, and just flattened this just a little bit so that when you're looking straight at it, it gives you a little bit more of that whole brow definition going on. And I heated this, and from the outside, I pinched it this way once it was warm, and from the inside, I stuck my hand in and I pinched it up and down this way, both at the same time. This hand on the inside going like this, and this hand on the outside pinching in this way to help push in more of that definition from the brow to the actual nose region. And that's what it looks like from the front, okay? Next, like I say, I'm going to start working on heating this area and kind of bowing in the eyes and cheekbones. So I've got pretty much all of the heat forming done. Now, whenever I do this, I do it a small section at a time. I'm going to run through what I did really quick to save the time of explaining it as I do it, which would take like 10-20 minutes as I gradually do this, or doing a time lapse where you're not going to see anything and you'll get some vague narration, if any. So first I heat around on the inside of the eyes and I push them in. They were flat before, now they kind of curve in. So that was one of the first things, getting these to curve in. Next, I move on to the temple area here, and it's very subtle, but you can see it dips in just a little bit. I heat it on the inside first and push this in, then heat it on the outside and just make sure it stays until it cools. And I did this on both sides. You have this slight slope pretty much coming right from the seam here, where the brow ridge would essentially end and transition into the temple. Knowing human anatomy and having reference photos when you're doing this helps a lot. And also, keep in mind, everybody, this is an example. This is what I'm doing. You should always blaze your own trail, do your own thing, but this is a how-to video and I'm showing you how I do it. And next, I work on the nose, and first, I heat up on the inside the mouth area, and I pushed it in some. So you see here, you get that nice slope from the nose area over where the mouth would be to the chin. And you get that nice comic book shape and that nice comic book look. Once I get that done, I heat it on the inside, and I put the 2 fingers of my left hand on the outside because I am right-handed, and I put 1 finger on the inside, and I pull this way in a straight line from the corner of the nose down on both sides while pressing on the top, which gives you that nice line definition on both sides. And then I simply heat the bottom on the inside and curve this jaw under a little bit so it has a nice curve running from the edge of the jaw here up to the chin. And I do that on both sides, heating on the inside, pressing on the outside. Then I go back through once again on the outside, heat it again, and form that the way that I want it. Okay? And moving on to the rest of this, I pulled in some cheekbones by heating on the inside and pushing out, and then heating the outside and repeating that until I have a nice rounded cheekbone shape going right here, okay, on both sides. And you can see the nice flowing lines. You have the nose area circling into the cheekbone, into the temple, up into the brow, a slight flattening here, as I showed earlier. And of course, last but not least, is I heated the ear areas on the inside and pushed them out, and repeat again, heat on the outside and push out. Make sure I wait until it's cool so that it holds its shape. I did that on both sides. And then, on the back here, the only other thing I did was I heated behind where the line here is for the jaw on the inside and just kind of straightened this out a little bit to give it a little bit of a dip in to make the jaw area pop out a bit more. And that is pretty much it, aside from some occasional fine-tuning and certain things that I may or may not notice that I feel are a little too big or a little too small or a little off on one side. Maybe the cheekbone's a little more here, a little less there. Honestly, I don't think it is now. But as I work on this, I notice it. And that's okay, because as long as I haven't sealed or painted this, I can always reheat and adjust my shape as I go along. Just be careful, though, because if you heat the foam too heavily and too much and too often in a spot, it continues to shrink and get brittle. So if you haven't done this before, like I say, and you are using a heat gun for the first time, be safe, be careful, follow the instructions, take safety precautions, and be intelligent about what you're doing. If you're underage, please ask an adult for help, assistance, guidance, or just have them do it for you. Alright, now that I've got all the main shaping done, it's time for sanding prior to putting on the eye pattern pieces. And to sand this, I use a Dremel 4000. Now, I do this mainly because it speeds things up, so if you're not comfortable with power tools or don't have one or don't want to spend the money on it or cannot afford it, you can always just use sandpaper. However, I suggest that you use a medium grit and then a fine grit. Definitely something over 150 grit, something higher than that, like 300 grit to 600 grit. 300 to start with and then 600 to follow. If you have a real big spot that you really need to work out, you can use something rougher. Just understand that the harder that you press with it and the more emphasis and speed you put on your sanding swipes, you will possibly gouge the foam. Now, to use the Dremel, I usually set it around 18, right in between 15 and 20 essentially, on the adjustment wheel here. And as I do it, I don't do deep, hard, heavy-handed swipes on it. What I do is I make quick, concise, slow progress little swipes across the whole thing until I get it evened out. All the Dremel work is now done. I have sanded all the seams, including the tougher ones like the ears, and I also used the Dremel to carve in these lines a little bit more to make them look like furrows in the brow, like right in there and in there, just kind of continuing the shape of everything that's already going on. Also sanding down all the center seams and being careful to get the edges and just eyeballing it and getting it as even and rounded and level as possible. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat all these sanded areas after I hand sand them. Yes, even though I have a head Dremel, I still have to hand sand them. And I'm going to hand sand this down to even it all out. Then I'll do one quick, very quick swipe with it over the heat gun. And then I will go with hot glue on the inside here, and I will reinforce all of the seams that I glued together with contact cement on the inside. Not all of them everywhere, but in the main stress points, like where they come together in this plus shape especially, and on the very corners of these V-cuts, here and then down here as well. Those are high stress areas, and if anywhere that it tends to want to pull a point is there, and where they meet together in this sort of plus shape. Okay, I have finished the hand sanding, and then I took my heat gun and just went over it real quick to seal up all the areas that I sanded because they got kind of dull and a little soft. And then, like I said, on the inside I took hot glue and reinforced the weaker areas that I was afraid might lose their shape or come undone, because I really don't want that. I really am super happy with the general profile and definition and shape of this thus far. So now I have the other pattern piece, which is the eye accent. And the eye accent has a gap here, and I did, of course, put registration marks on it for you. Can't see them, I guess maybe a little bit, you can see them, but I ended up cutting mine out of black 2mm EVA foam, and I put my pattern, I transferred it onto some orange too, just so that it will last me longer and it's easier to store and save versus paper cardstock, at least I feel like it is. And I'm going to take these and line them up with the eye. The hook here, up on the top, should, if I can hold this in place, should just about, yeah, go right up into that furrow right here whenever you glue it on. So I'm going to go ahead and trace around this and then use my contact cement to put this to it. Alright, I glued on the eye, and you notice all this red stuff grouped on it. That is an acrylic latex with silicone from a company called DAP, and the actual product name is ALEX PLUS. It is a water-based latex silicone blend, and there are two types of it. There is a 24-hour to 36-hour slow dry. That's if you apply it thickly. For this, then it doesn't take that long. And there is a fast dry. The fast dry can be sanded. This stuff, not so much. You just have to get it as smooth as possible. If you don't feel confident with that, you can go with the fast dry and you can sand that. For more information and to see how I do that and techniques on that, you can always watch my BVS Batman cowl build video. But for this, you'll notice this is pink, and this stuff is a brilliant red. When you actually purchase the silicone, it comes out in a kind of a clearish white color, and I added some food coloring to this to turn it red. But whenever it's still in its liquid state before it sets and hardens and dries, like this, it is a pink. When it dries, it becomes this dark red, which is kind of nice because it's an indicator that it's done and ready to be plasti-dipped, which I had to go to the store and pick up so that I could plasti-dip this once I am finished applying all the silicone. Now, I did leave a seam undone so I could demonstrate this on camera, so you see how I do this. I get a little bit of the silicone on the tip of my finger, or you can use an applicator tool, which you will also see me use a lot in the BBS video, but for this, my seams are good enough that I'm not really concerned with it. Some of the excess off there. Okay. Now that that is done, I'm going to take this container here that I have just normal everyday household tap water in, and since this is acrylic and essentially water-based, I'm going to dip the tip of my finger in this and get it wet, and then I'm going to use my wet finger to smooth out and basically remove all the excess that I don't want right around it and help blend all that in so that it doesn't look like a lumpy, ugly mess. All the excess that just kind of runs and drips everywhere, I just spread out. The foam will absorb it, and it won't really affect it. Those areas will look flush and smooth when you plastic it before everything else, but that's about the only real thing that you're going to experience, and that's not exactly even like a problem or a downside. Okay, just, especially if you're like me and you're going to put 3 or 4 coats of plastic, it doesn't matter. By the time you get to that point, it's going to look sheer and smooth anyways. There. But, of course, since this stuff is water-based, as it dries and the air evaporates, it does tend to shrink up. So you may have to apply more than 1 coat. Like, I put it on pretty darn thick right in here, if you can see, and it has shrunk up, and you can totally see that there is a lip right there. It's just, you can feel it too, there's still a bump. So I have to apply more through here, and this is pretty smooth, but just in case I put a little more through there too. I'm going to go through and put on a second layer. Alright, now the plastic dip has had plenty of time to dry. I used a paintbrush and some testors, white enamel model paint, and it took 2 coats for me to do the white and get it a nice, even, solid, consistent white. And of course I did blurb a little bit, so I had to touch it up with a little bit of black, same stuff enamel. And it does take a little bit longer to dry than the acrylic craft paint, but the reality is, had I used the acrylic craft paint, I would have had to put like 4 or 5 coats to get it that white, and that stuff, you know, whenever it dries, it's very crumbly, and I don't like it unless I'm going to be covering it with a clear coat, and I'm not intending upon clear coating this. So next what I've done is taken a piece of sheer fabric and my eye pattern, and I traced loosely around this center hole here. And next I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to use some Createx opaque black airbrush paint to turn this from this shiny, glittery, whitish color into black. Alright, so I've allowed the pieces that I've airbrushed to dry and removed them. However, over top of them, I'm going to layer a piece of this other screen fabric that has the slightest bit of shine to it. I don't know if you can really pick that up. It's just mildly glittery. And that way, whenever I move around, the light will hit it and make this pop a little bit. And it's also a bigger texture as far as the size of the holes in comparison to the under black fabric. But I'm hoping between the two, it should block out enough light that you don't see my eyes. If not, then I'm going to have to go back later and add in another layer of the sheer fabric behind this. But I'm going to go ahead and glue these into the mask. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my super glue to the inside around the eyes, and nothing special, just dollar store super glue. Very carefully apply it around the inside of the eyes here, and then just line them up and set them in place essentially. Alright, the fabric has been put in. Quick look over. Seams don't look too bad. I actually thought I was going to end up wanting to apply more of the acrylic latex with silicone, but I'm actually pretty happy with the way that it all turned out. And to show you the rest of the lens work that I did, once I glued them in with the super glue, like I said, I just put the super glue around the edge of the eye and then just laid both pieces of fabric on it. And then I did one eye at a time, and I let, for example, let's say I let this one set for about a minute or two, and then I used my hot glue gun to just kind of go around the edge of it and help weigh down the cloth and make sure the super glue isn't going to move. And then I just gently pressed from the center of the fabric with my fingers so that it has a slight rounded appearance to it whenever you're looking at it, and kind of bows out instead of sinks in or is just flat. That way it gives it a little bit more dimension. And hopefully it'll show up on camera here, the tool, how it slightly sparkles and catches the light as it turns, but it really picks up that texture. And I think it helps make the mask pop and look something other than just, you know, kind of ordinary face shell mask. Alright, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and you like how the Agent Venom turned out. Like I say, this was some excellent practice, particularly on the brow area for the upcoming Dark Knight that I want to do for the next video. And in the future too, I want to do more of a Red Hood. Another Red Hood, but more of a Rebirth style Red Hood mask, along with some elements from the new 52 version as well thrown in. Just kind of going to do, as usual, my own thing, but yeah, I really like the way the Rebirth Red Hood looks. I think it looks awesome. They drew inspiration for that design from a lot of different things, and I really want to work that in. So as always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like, as it does help out the channel a lot. And if you're not a subscriber and you'd like to see more videos like this, please do subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. And as always, good luck with your builds, and thanks for watching.